Okay, good evening, everyone. Just give me a minute to set up my audio and we will begin shortly. First of all, I'm just going to put in a few polls just so that I can understand whether you guys can see me. Okay, first of all, can you see my screen? Please vote on your screens. Okay, we have started to collect responses. You should be able to see it on your polls. Great, you can see my screen. Next, am I audible? I think since my instructions are coming across clearly, I am going to make sure that, just to be 100% clear, that I am audible. Okay, I am audible for the most part. Great. It is just about 4:02 p.m. right now. I think we'll wait for just a few more minutes, maybe 2 to 3 minutes, while I explain the mode of the entire presentation. Um, In the meantime, I can give you an overview of what we'll be covering and give an idea of the agenda for today and the overall way we were going to be touching this webinar. So the chat is actually disabled and so is the audio. It's just a webinar. It's not a meeting where you can actually speak or do anything in terms of communicating with us apart from asking questions. Questions we'll be addressing at the very end of the presentation. We'll have plenty of time to do the Q&A and we hope to address as many of your queries as possible and try to address most of the questions that you have. Any questions that are not addressed, you are welcome to contact us after the webinar and we'll try to address them as much as we can. It is just about 4:03. So yeah, I mean, I'll give it a few more minutes. Right. Your queries will be addressed at the very end. And yeah, I don't think there's any harm in beginning just about the introduction about what we are going to be covering. So yeah, the major topic of today is the blueprint for studying abroad. And it's going to be an overall look at the application process, the part that actually comes before the application process. So this is going to be something that is really useful for students who are considering studying abroad, but are not quite there and not quite understanding how to approach the process, what kind of questions they should be answering, what kind of insights they should be having, and so on and so forth. So we hope that this will really help those students who have made up their mind to study abroad or have the idea to study abroad, but don't know what courses, what countries, what kind of programs are available, what are the emerging fields of study, what are the latest visa updates, and so on and so forth. In many of the countries, obviously we cannot cover everything, but we will try to give you an overall picture. Considering that it is just about 6:04, I will begin. And so wish you guys again a warm welcome and welcome to this webinar today. The first thing that we wanted to talk about is today's agenda. Today's webinar is to give you an overview of the journey that is there a student goes through before they begin the actual application process. So we would like to give you an idea of like students who are planning to apply in 2025, because 2024, it is a bit late for that. However, if you are planning to start now, this is going to be something that will help you understand what you can do and what kind of updates are there in the major countries. We want students to attend this webinar to have learned at least one thing you did not know before and empower the students with the right information to make the best decisions for their careers, right? This is at the heart of what we do. And we hope that you will find it an informational session, whether you are in the initial stages of your study abroad journey or in the middle of your study abroad journey. If you are at the very end, this will be a bit less helpful for you because you will not be covering the application process as much or the visa process as much, but it is all going to be about how do you decide what to do, which country to pursue, and so on and so forth. A little bit about Longshore Education before we begin. We help students apply to the countries, need more than 30 of them actually at this point, and work with students from all over India and some, in fact, in even other countries like the US and Bhutan, Nepal, and so on. We are a Delhi-based education consulting company. We follow a student-centric approach. So one of the major things that I like to do is keep the student at the very center of the process, making sure that we don't recommend anything that is not suitable for that particular student. There are no right and wrong answers when it comes to international education. And what might be right for one student may not be right for another student. So we apply to a wide category of institutions while always making sure that the student goes to a place where they're actually that is actually a good fit for them in their overall careers. And of course, a little bit about myself, just so that you know whom you are talking to today. My name is Yash Sharma. I have studied at the University of Texas, Dallas, actually, in what seems to be a lifetime ago. But I enjoy working with students and have had over about 10 years of experience of helping the students. Last year, I founded Longshore Education, and one of my major goals was to help students separate the myths from facts, because these days the problem is not of too little information, but the problem is of too much information. Trying to separate the signal from the noise is something that I pride myself on. In the past, I have organized education fairs, US centric, because the focus was on US and Canada before. I have co-hosted US Embassy visa sessions with consular officers and personally counseled more than 1,000 students, and overall, definitely far more than that. In the past, my students have been admitted to top universities like Carnegie Mellon, University of Southern California, University of California, Berkeley, Columbia, and much more, right? If I was to talk about the application process, I do enjoy working on specific parts of the application process with each student, and a high focus on essays and SOPs. So editing the essays, editing the SOPs is something that I quite enjoy, and matching the students with their universities based on their overall interest is another area which I pride myself on. Okay, so enough about myself and enough about Longshore Education. Let us talk about what we're here to talk about today, which is the current scenario of international education. So 2024 is actually an interesting time to be going to study abroad. Just like in India, there is a major election happening in various countries all over the world, including the US, UK, Australia, Canada, and so on. So in France as well, for that matter, Germany just completed their election. For them, for these countries, migration is a major focus, because since the COVID pandemic reduced the number of students moving from India all over the world and from one country to another, really, there has been a huge boom in the numbers. The reduction of migration is something that these countries are focusing on now. Canada, Australia, UK have had huge numbers of inflation, huge numbers of students, and a housing crisis as well. Based on this, they're trying to reduce the number of students to come into the picture. And you see all these headlines that I have posted, which is that Canada has ended port of entry work permits for foreign graduates. So this means that before students were able to go to the port of entry and apply for a postgraduate work permit. Um, there are particular curbs on UK as well. We'll talk about that on when we start discussing UK specifically. And new curbs are there in the application, in the visa process. Australia itself has tightened the student visa rules and increased the amount of money that you need to show twice over a period of 1 year. While in the last 5 years, it had not been increased even once. Canada has also done the same. So basically, you are trying to get the idea that controlling this net migration, which is the number of people coming into the country, is a major, major focus in each country. So actually speaking, if you look at any kind of survey, any kind of market insight, you will always see that international students create a maximum amount of impact, and they actually contribute to the society and contribute to the economy. But it has become a political issue. And unfortunately, this is the scenario that we find ourselves in. However, it's not all doom and gloom. There is actually a boom going on as well. Because as I said, after the pandemic, there is actually a huge interest in students who want to go abroad. Indian students are, going out in record numbers. They are going abroad, and last year we actually overtook India. We overtook China as the as the country with the highest population, and we also overtook China as the country with the highest international students going abroad in the study abroad sector. Even countries like Ireland are attracting, 10 times the number of students they were attracting just 5 years ago. And Indian students are there creating a boom in US universities. More than 250,000 of them visas were issued last year. And, you can see many headlines about students getting opportunities to study abroad. And there is a major interest in studying abroad from Indian students. So before we even get into the questions of which country and all those kind of things, studying abroad is something which is it's a major life decision, right? It can really lead to a completely different path in terms of personal life as well as professional life. So why study abroad, right? There are just a few things that I've put up on a slide, but generally speaking, if you have come to this webinar, you have kind of got some kind of interest, and one or two or even all of these things might be applying to you. Um, Overall, there is supposed to be a long-term boost to the earnings. If you look at the salaries of people who have studied abroad versus salaries of people who haven't, you can see that students who have studied abroad earn a lot more money, considering their long-term careers. You get access to a wide variety of world-class institutions. You get better infrastructure and facilities, more academic options, international cultural exposure. So even though India has some good institutions, the kind of student set that you get to interact with are not as diverse and not as all over the world as you would get from a foreign institution where you are studying there with students from maybe 30 countries, 40 countries, even in some cases 100 countries. This is something that the next point is something which everyone would have encountered at some point in their careers, which is the lack of seats at Indian institutions. The competition keeps increasing. Just very recently, we had this whole scenario where 67 people scored a perfect score in the in the NEET UG exam, which is not something which is very viable because considering the apex body of medicine in India, AIMS only has about 30 seats for medicine. So even if you consider this fact that all these students get admitted to AIMS, you still have 35 students who will not be able to get there. Upgrading your skill set, of course, because making yourself more competitive in fields which are not available in India is something that can help you in becoming a competitive candidate in the global job market. Even if you are planning to come back, India has got the idea of setting up many global capability centers these days. Foreign institutions are setting up their hubs in India. And if you have had experiences in interacting with those companies abroad, when you come back to India, it definitely makes you a far better candidate than if you had a completely Indian education. Of course, there are people who want to work abroad after finishing their degrees, and becoming a student and studying at one of those places is one of the best options of doing so. Um, and that's the global career opportunities that you get. Personal growth is a major factor. You go outside your comfort zone, you live in a different country, you see things that you interact with a set of people that you would not have interacted with before. And last but definitely not the least, for most of us, is going to be a path to settling abroad, which is the migration. So I think this is at this stage, again, I would like to try to get a bit of understanding from you guys, which is that what are your concerns? Because we would like to know a little bit about what concerns you have about studying abroad. So I'm just going to open one more poll, and there are some options there. And if you feel that is not covered, you can basically put it in the Q&A as well. So the poll will be live just about now. You have on the screen student visa rejections, lack of jobs, safety issues, high cost, post-study work policy changes, or anything else. About 70% of you have responded, so I'm hoping at least a few more end up responding so that we can move ahead. Right, so we're just at about 85%, so I'll just stop this poll and show the results. I hope you can see the results. And if you have any other concerns which were not covered by this, please make sure that you put that in the question and answer box. So lack of jobs is something that is there, and high cost is something which is there in something which is the major concern for Indian students who want to study abroad. Student visa rejection, post-study work visa policy changes, and others are other things, but no one has mentioned safety. Okay, so I will not be focusing that much on safety during my presentation, but we will. It's good that because we will focus a little bit on the lack of jobs and the student visa rejection as well as the cost aspect of things. Okay, so that is as far as this goes, and moving on to the next slide. Right. So there are two approaches, right? Basically, at the end of the day, students who want to go abroad are focused either on academics, this includes career growth, or on migration, right? Um, we are at Longshore and we are focused on the academic approach, right? Migration at all costs is not generally an approach that we prescribe to. And generally speaking, it is what the crackdown on student visas is all about. Basically, people who want to migrate to a foreign country at all costs without looking at the academic aspect of things is something which the countries are trying to crack down on. They have no problems against international students per se or in principle, but the idea that students who want to go there without having a quality education or going for courses which are available in India and going there only for the view of settling abroad is something which is being cracked down on by many countries. I'll try to explain this over the course of over the course of this presentation. But the conclusion that we want you to understand is that if you are a serious student, there are still many options available and you don't have anything to worry about. However, the migration at all costs is a pathway which is perfectly fine. I mean, if that is what you want to do, but it is something where a lot of risk is involved in terms of going ahead. So if we look at people who are aspiring professionals versus people who want to migrate, they will look at two different aspects of the application process. One is which course to study and which country to study in, right? So that is really the heart of the presentation. So again, as I said before, I want to make it clear that due to the constraints of this webinar, I cannot really cover any topic which is too much in depth because this webinar will otherwise be, more than 6 hours long. We won't be covering application strategy per se, and we will not be able to deep dive into like any of the countries or any of the courses, but we will try to give you an overview of the process so that you can decide what is best for you. The application process is a very personal journey, and what is right for someone may not be right for others. As mentioned, the immigration approach is something that is not something that we are entirely focused on. If a student comes to us to tell us that, I want to go to this country for any particular course, we try to counsel them to understand how that could work out and try to help them understand that going for this is exactly the kind of thing which the countries are trying to crack down on and may create a bit of issues for them a bit later. So we focus on a quality-led approach rather than an immigration-led one. So having said that, I would like to try to understand what is the level of study of the people that will be pursuing today, that are actually attending today. Are you going for your bachelor's? Are you going for your master's? And so for that, I will just be putting up a poll, which is going to be there on your screen. You can see it's going to be bachelor's, it's going to be master's, it's going to be PhD or other. Perhaps you're going for a certificate program, diploma program, something else, and so on and so forth. Okay, please answer. Okay, nothing for PhD so far, mostly master's and MBA. 80-20 result. We just have about 77% who have answered. Anyone else want to go for it? Okay, so that is again it around. Okay, so most of you have, we have one PhD as well. Okay, so right, so this is the result that we have. I'll try to focus a little bit on bachelor's. Masters will take the primary focus from my presentation, as well as a little bit about PhD because the application process for PhD is far more complex than that for bachelor's or master students. Master students are anyway the most highest priority for the countries all over the world. And the other set, which is the set of students who want to go for PG diplomas, who want to go for certificate programs, short-term courses that imply a lower skilled academic outcome, are the ones that the countries are not as much promoting anymore. So moving on, before we go on to the countries aspect, we will talk a little bit about the emerging courses that are there in the current scenario. Okay, sec. Right. Okay, so fields of the future, the ones that are going to be around for some time and going to be something that can be trending, can be something that you can consider if you are trying to study the next couple of years. The hot topic currently is, of course, artificial intelligence and machine learning. I will just group these into one particular and talk about them all at once. These fields are revolutionizing the industries. So it's not really about artificial intelligence as a whole as by itself, but everyone will need to know a certain degree of artificial intelligence going forward. And studying the aspects of AI and ML can actually equip you to understand these intelligent systems, analyze big data, contribute to things such as high-tech technology, whether it is included in self-driving, whether it is included in automation, healthcare, robotics, marketing, everything, right? So AI and ML are going to creep into every single field that we pursue, and their integration with various fields is going to be of interest in the coming years. Of course, we are increasing the amount of information that we are producing on a daily basis and protecting that information, whether it is privacy policies or the data privacy or the protection of your data from bad actors such as hackers. Cybersecurity is becoming more and more crucial. Studying abroad in this field can actually help you with the skills to protect networks and data from cyber threats. So this is something that organizations anticipate that they will be spending more money on in the future. So cybersecurity is a field that will definitely get you a job in the future and actually end up being a far more important aspect of the IT industry. We've got, of course, got data science and analytics. In the last 5 years, businesses have become highly data driven. Studying data science abroad can really help you get insights from these massive data sets, solve these complex problems, inform the strategic decision makers, and try to understand how information and numbers can be used to make good decisions. One aspect, of course, is climate change and environment. And so renewable energy and sustainability is a focus all over the world, whether it is in the European countries or back home in India. Climate change has led to a huge amount of focus on sustainability, decarbonization, and studying these fields can help you develop renewable energy solutions, promote environmental friendly approaches, and contribute to a greener future. Then you have to look at the intersection of renewable energy and sustainability with other aspects. So, for example, these days, there is a focus on sustainably developing packaging, sustainably developing logistics, sustainably developing uh, steel manufacturing. So, reducing the carbon impact and reducing the environmental impact is something that a lot of people are focused on. So, if you have a sustainability and renewable energy interest, and how to approach that in various industries is going to be a major major point. There's also the intersection of two different fields. So, for example, you can have AI in finance, biotechnology in AI, supply chain and logistics, and renewable and sustainability, just the way I said. The intersection of renewable energy and sustainability and finance can also be there. For example, how to calculate the carbon impact of a particular policy. These intersecting fields are the ones that are also going to be there. And that is something which people need to focus on. I also want to clarify one major misconception which is there. What has become popular recently since 2022 are large language models or generative AI tools, which is ChatGPT, Gemini, Cloud, Anthropic, and so on and so forth, Midjourney and Dolly as well. AI is actually a much broader field. It covers everything from self-driving cars to Snapchat filters. So what has become popular is just one aspect of it, which is consumer facing. But really, when it comes to the underlying technology, they have been around for a long time, whether it comes to your prediction of weather, whether it comes to prediction of the markets, whether it comes to trying to understand, how your behavior is going to be on your smartphone. So the fields of study that you're going to pursue should also be something that actually ends up working out over a long term. So we have got the idea of one thing that I've not included over here is cryptocurrency or blockchain. If this presentation was happening in 2018 or maybe 2022 or maybe 2021, then I would be including, maybe I might have included blockchain as well, because it was a technology that came about and there was a huge amount of interest in technology and blockchain. But the cryptocurrency has been very volatile. There has been many scams, and in general, the education that is there has completely the education programs that were there focused towards it, like financial programs and so on, have actually completely reduced their focus on it. The current comparison between AI can actually be seen with the internet. So the internet came about in the late 90s, and since then, it has actually been a necessity in our lives and not just an innovative technology. However, in the early 2000s, there was a dot-com bubble which burst, which led to a lot of companies going under and not surviving. So what remains to be seen is how much AI is going to be part of our lives 10 years from now. But just because, so if even if you don't know how to program you don't know how to program, or you don't know how to do the software coding, the internet by itself has become a very important part of your life. So even if you may not know how to program artificial intelligence tools, AI is going to come up in every aspect of your life at some point, and trying to understand how to deal with it is going to be something that you will have to focus on. I think I would just like to also understand what is the field of study that you guys are, interested in. So this is going to be one more poll, and after that we get into the countries. So what is your intended field of study? Let's just have a look at it. The question should be on your screens. Business and related includes MBA, it includes business analytics, it includes finance, economics, commerce, and so on. Computer science includes IT, data science, information systems, cybersecurity. Engineering would be mechanical, civil, aerospace, one of the classical engineerings, other than computing. So if it is a computing focused, that would be something else. Um, so it's a bit of a mix. We've got business and computer science total about 80% of the audience, and we've got an 8% and 8% in others, as well as the engineering, which is probably a mechanical, civil, aerospace, one of those, right? So it's fine. Business and related computer science, of course, this is something that is the popular field anyway for Indian students. But it's a good idea that you guys have an idea of what you want to study. But even if you're not completely sure, you can decide based on some of these new fields that are available. Obviously, a lot of them are related towards computing and higher technology. But even if you don't have that, try to be aware of what is happening in these worlds so that you can perhaps get some better opportunities in the future. Okay, so let's move on. So we covered a little bit about the course that you want to study, the aspect of academics, like which fields of study might be, something that will be good in the future. But let us talk a little bit about the countries. So there is the big four of international education, which I have posted up top. You've got the US, you've got the UK, you've got Canada, and you've got Australia. Approximately 80% of the international student market is concentrated at these four countries. So we'll be talking a lot about each of them one by one. And we'll try to give you an idea about the student visa situation, the pros and cons of each country, the economic situation, and the post-study situation. We'll also be talking about some alternative destinations because, as I mentioned, we cannot really cover everything. One of the countries that has come up in the picture recently is Ireland. A lot of interest there. Germany is another one which has seen a lot of growth in the very recent past. So those two we will focus on. We'll also touch upon Singapore as well as Hong Kong. But beyond that, we will not be able to do a deep dive too much. We'll be talking a little bit about non-English speaking destinations and what kind of experiences they offer. So the alternative destinations are Germany, France, Ireland, and New Zealand is also venture. Sorry, New Zealand also is something that we'll be covering. So that is something that is there in the top in the slides to come. I think this should be the final poll before we go into the countries process, actually, because I did want to know which of these destinations are you guys interested in. We've got the UK, United States, Australia, Canada, Ireland, Germany, or any others. Still got 62%. I'm hoping for a couple more answers before we. So mostly covers all of them. Here is the result. Mostly US is about half the audience. We've got about 18% in Australia, 9% in Ireland, Canada, and Germany. And got others as well. Nothing for the UK and not much else going on. But okay, let's just have a look at these countries and what is going on when it comes to their regulations and what is going on in terms of what they have to offer. So naturally, the biggest one that attracts the most number of students, the United States of America. It is the biggest destination for international students all over the world. It is the most popular destination. Students from India and China make up half of the population of international students that are over there. You've got Silicon Valley, you've got world-renowned universities like Harvard, MIT, Stanford, the Ivy League. You've got the highest amount of flexibility in the program offerings. So, in fact, if you are a high school student, and I know that there are a couple of undergraduate students over here, if you don't know what to do, the flexibility of the United States in academics is really unmatched. If you want, you can actually switch your major up to 2 years in your career. You can even try it 3 years in your undergraduate career. But because of the focus on holistic education, the amount of flexibility that it offers is not really comparable to any country. Research is a big aspect over here, leading to groundbreaking discoveries and a very stimulating academic environment. And it is the gold standard of infrastructure and campus life. The way US campuses are, you won't really find them, off comparison anywhere else in the world. But it is something that also comes with a high cost. Relative to the other countries, it does offer tuition fees that are far higher than other countries. And that is something that students should be aware of. So when it comes to bachelor's degrees, students are expected to complete 4-year bachelor's degrees, regardless of the field that you're studying in, as opposed to UK and Australia, which does have a 3-year bachelor's degree. US, even if you're pursuing an academic course such as psychology, philosophy, anything, economics, it is going to be a 4-year degree. There's a strong emphasis on entrepreneurship. You've got many international students from India who are now CEOs. For example, Satya Nadella, Sundar Pichai, Parag Agarwal, who was the former CEO of Twitter before it was purchased by Elon Musk and renamed to X. These are all students who went to the US as international students, completed their degrees, moved on into the industry, and are now at very top positions in the industry. So, what are the disadvantages? As I mentioned, cost is one of them. I have put pros and cons under one heading because even though you have a pro, it can also have its counterpart right there. So the visa process is actually relatively, far more straightforward when it comes to documentation. It's an interview-led process, but the potential for rejection is much higher because last year in 2023 we had only a 65% approval rate all over the world. So you actually have got a chance to of getting rejected for a student visa, even though you don't have to provide too much documentation or upfront funding. Relative to Canada, Australia, and the other countries, UK, Germany, you don't need to block any money for the showing your funding. However, you just need to show liquid funds for the application process. There is the strongest world economy for STEM jobs, finance jobs, any kind of jobs. It is, where it is a world leading economy, but it has a very unclear path towards integration. So if you want to consider the post-study options as well, the OPT, which is the optional practical training, the US version of a post-study work permit, it's not an open work permit. It has to be linked to your field of study. So unlike, say, Canada, where you can, once you complete your education, you can even work as a, attendant, you can work as a manager, you can at a store, you can even work at McDonald's. You cannot do that in the US. If you have studied computer science, you cannot work at McDonald's unless and until you are programming some kind of app for them. So make sure that you keep that in mind. The student visa situation honestly is unchanged. There was a risk of rejection before. There's a risk of rejection now. The economic situation is the best in the world. However, the immigration situation is highly, highly complex. And if you want to settle abroad, the path can be about 10 years long or even longer than that. Aspiring students who aren't hell-bent on education, who want to study technology or finance, should definitely consider the US because even though it has a higher cost, it offers a good value for money and a large number of jobs. I know all of you did not mention safety as part of it, but the gun violence in the US is something which definitely comes up during the process. So safety issues can be there, but it is important to consider that the overall picture, it is a very, very safe environment on campuses. And just like everywhere, there are bad areas, especially in the bigger cities, that you should really be cautious about. So that is about the US. So UK is not something that any of you focused on as their first choice. And honestly speaking, I do understand a little bit why, because there are some changes in the student visa situation. However, it's not a deal breaker. The economic situation is improving, though skilled jobs are definitely lacking. And there is a bit of a change in the immigration situation as well. Definitely consider the UK if you are planning to return to India, are planning to work in your family business or start something of your own. Because it has a huge number of Indian students as well as second and third generation immigrants with Indian culture there in all major areas. It is also a suitable place for people who want to study finance or business related subjects, right? Students who are pursuing a master's which degree does not have a research component cannot take dependents along. However, this is not something which is a deal breaker for many students. If you are, unless and until you are focused on migration, in which case it is a deal breaker. What has been updated recently is the salary threshold to work on a worker visa. So after you have actually done the application, after you have actually completed your post-study work permit, which is an open work permit, uh, you have to have a minimum salary threshold of £38,000. Now, this may seem like a very large number. However, to survive in a place like London, which is one of the best cities to study in, but also one of the highest living costs, that is actually the minimum requirement that you need to survive over there, to pay your rent, to get your food, to make sure that you have a decent lifestyle. There's a shorter program duration when it compares to US. 1 year masters is there, and you've got big emphasis on research, critical thinking, communication skills, internationally recognized degrees. Many advantages. There is a clear path to immigration where you are eligible for indefinite leave to remain, the equivalent of a green card, in about 5 years. But you do need to have that highly skilled job which pays you more than 38,000 pounds per year. There are some fields which are below that threshold if they've got a lack in the particular uh, sector of that industry. However, the problem is that outside of those areas like finance and so on, there is, and technology for that matter, there is a lack of jobs. So a lot of people have not considered the UK. However, as I mentioned before, if you are planning to come back to India as a purely educational aspect and getting some experience at international exposure, there is nothing wrong with the UK. Moving on to Canada, which was until very recently one of the top choices for Indian students. It actually changed a lot recently because, Canada is known for its safety, it's known for its infrastructure, it's known for having a huge Indian community. It is known for welcoming attitude towards foreigners and one of the easiest paths to migration that is there. What has resulted in this is that a large number of Indian students have gone over there. In fact, recently there was this update where a 50-year-old man who was there in Canada got a student permit. So they have got some loopholes in the application, in the visa process, where they have allowed students from various paths to come into the country. And uh, this has resulted in a lot of low-skilled migration and lack of highly skilled jobs after graduation. The tuition fees is slightly better compared to US and UK, but the student visa capping has begun. Now, what does that mean? It means that most of you who are pursuing masters are not going to be affected whatsoever. In fact, the post-study work permit of master students has been increased from 2 years to 3 years. So, if you are actually planning to study something at one of the top Canadian universities, including University of British Columbia, including University of Toronto, including McGill, Waterloo, it is one of the best places to actually get your education because that is the area where you'll be able to find a decent job, uh, get a good career afterwards, and get a work permit which actually they want you to stay. There are major changes in the visa situation, as I mentioned. The economic situation is obviously dire because you've got all kinds of lack of jobs at the skill levels, and the immigration situation is in flux. Now, what do I mean by influx? Um, Canadian universities and colleges are not created equal. There are only a few research universities, and for those, the study permit capping is not going to be a problem. The problem is that in Canada, only about 7% of the students are pursuing degrees such as masters and highly skilled programs. Most of the students that go from India are pursuing diploma courses, certificate programs, and so on and so forth, or planning to study English as well. They are the ones who are going to be affected a lot more by the student visa capping. Regarding the postgraduate work permit, there is some kind of proposal on the table where the postgraduate work permit, it was retained in the UK, but in Canada, they are trying to link it, make it not completely open, make it linked to the field of study. So if you have got a lack of, if you've got a less demand in that particular, if you've got a high demand in that particular area or an in-demand field, your program should be preparing you for that, and that is how your postgraduate work permit is going to be aligned. Um, so for postgraduate students who want to pursue a master's, great option definitely. But if you are planning to go for just for the migration purposes, not such a favorable option anymore. So last, but the one with the most changes in the recent past is Australia. Oh, one more thing about Canada, which I forgot to mention, is that the amount of money that you needed to show before was about 10,000 Canadian dollars. And now that amount has now increased to about 20,000 Canadian dollars. Australia, that was the first change that happened in just about a decade. Australia, on the other hand, has had the most amount of changes. So it has world-class universities, a diverse range of programs and research, and pleasant weather definitely. Top-ranked universities, especially the group of 8 and beyond, they can be a bit difficult to get into, just like the top Canadian universities. Australian culture is pretty good in terms of making sure that you have a healthy work-life balance. You can pursue other activities, part-time jobs, so on and so forth. The job market is also a bit more focused on the areas where they are lacking the talent and trying to focus on getting the students on board. If you are there in one of those high demand fields, then you have a very good option. And because even though Australia is actually changing a lot when it comes to students, when it comes to skilled students, when it comes to students who are planning to go to the group of 8 or planning to go to the top universities, you don't have too much of a problem. There is a risk factor being assigned to each university that or college that works in Australia, and they are trying to close all the loopholes that are there. So at one point of time, students were going to Australia with a visa for a one particular university and then hopping on to a different university. This is not something that they are going to tolerate in the future. They're not going to tolerate in the future. Excuse me. And this is not something this is a loophole that they have closed. When it comes to the academic rigor and career preparation, Australia is pretty good. It has completely revamped the student visa situation from a genuine temporary entrance scheme to a genuine student test, and the postgraduate visa has also been revamped. The amount that you needed to show before, just about a year ago, was 19,000 Australian dollars. Now it was increased to about 21,000 Australian dollars in 2022 23 October, and then increased again to 29,000 Australian dollars in May. The potential extension for the postgraduate visas is also there. So again, the students who are going there for masters should not have anything to worry about. They will be eligible if their program is covered under the skill set to actually have a longer stay period of 4 years because of a separate treaty between India and Australia. Jobs are available in the skilled set, but the student visa situation and immigration situation can change at any point of time. There's also a cap of 35 years of age at the master's level, which is something that can affect students, but not something which should be a major deterrent. If you're planning to study in Australia and are interested potentially staying long term, research the skills and demand visa and the requirements at the skilled occupation list. Because if you're covered in that, then you have nothing to worry about. So outside of the big four, I generally do not recommend undergraduate students to go to a non-English speaking culture because it is something where if you're not able to communicate in the local language with a higher level of skill, you will find it very isolating. Postgraduate students can be more career-oriented and skill set focused. And when you are there for a shorter period of time, rather than just about a year or 18 months, you can be a little bit more proactive at trying to, not focus on those aspects, like the social aspects of making friends and so on, and focusing more on your career. If you are in a non-English speaking culture and if you don't have a high degree of proficiency in the local language, the jobs that you will be eligible for are mostly limited to MNCs. I'm not talking about the jobs that are available on campus or just off campus as a butler, as a waiter or a server, or as working in a part-time in a particular place. The amount of work that you can do as a real professional, as an aspiring professional, is going to be limited at an MNC which has a English speaking culture. Unless there are students who are wanting to study something highly technical. For example, if you're doing programming, if you have got the idea to become a doctor and study medicine, you can definitely consider a non-English speaking country as well. Having said that, if your country is linked to a very specific industry, for example, fashion in Milan, which is Italy, automobiles in Germany, hospitality in Switzerland, you could definitely try to consider those places because they are where the most renowned institutions are available. Think about how the skills you are learning will translate all over the world. So be more skills focused and focused on how you are deciding to go forward from there. So even though there are countries where you can decide to pursue various courses, do not apply or do not go just for the sake of going or just for the sake that the path is easy. Try to figure out what outcome it will lead to. So alternative destinations, there is, no problem in starting with Ireland. It is an EU country. It is a member of the European Union. The island itself is divided into two parts: the Republic of Ireland, which is a independent country, and you've got Northern Ireland, which is part of the United Kingdom. It is a friendly, safe, English-speaking country. It's got a wider range of tuition fees, with the lowest somewhere around 8,000 euro, and the highest to be somewhere around 15,000 euro. Sorry, 25,000 euro, not 15,000 euro. Relatively wider range, as I mentioned. Internationally recognized qualifications, top universities, for example, University College Dublin, Trinity College Dublin. You've got a post-study work visa of 2 years for masters, 1 year for bachelors, and the chance to get permanent residency, which is the indefinite rights to stay. The number of students in Ireland was 20, was about 2000, in about 2014 was about 700. And just in 2023, the number is 7,700. So we have seen a 10 times increase in just a period of 10 years. The top universities are highly selective, and the mid-tier universities are also, offering good quality education at a lower price point. Germany, also somewhere which has the number has doubled in the last 5 years. You could see that in 2018, the number was about 21,000, while the number now is somewhere around 43,000. It's it's the biggest economy when it comes to Europe, and leads the continent in terms of growth, employment, and export. As students are allowed to stay 18 months after completion of the study to search for a job. You have the chance to apply for permanent residency, but again, as a non-English speaking country in the urban areas and the major cities like Berlin, Frankfurt, so on, English is not going to be a problem. You would be able to get by. But the idea is that if you are a student who have got some kind of German language skills, it is really going to help you against your fellow peers. So, if you would like to make sure that you are considering Germany, make sure that you have, even if you're going for an English language course, you should have at least some level of German skills. Obviously, it's well known for its automotive industry, mechanical engineering sector, material science, and so on. One aspect that I wanted to cover, which was that there is a misconception that education is free in Germany. While this is not wrong, it is limited to the public universities. At the undergraduate level, so if you are at a bachelor's level, most public universities don't even have English speaking courses. So keep that in mind. At the higher level, there are some English speaking courses, but they are highly selective. So if you do get there, congratulations, you've got yourself a free education and only some minor fees to be paid per semester. But the private universities do charge a bit of fees, but they are the ones which have the courses. And if you look at the facilities that are available in Germany versus are available in one of the Anglophone countries like US, UK, Australia, it's a far more self-starting culture. Students are, they're in big lecture halls, they have to schedule their own classes. It's a completely different kind of situation than, when it comes to the other countries. There are larger class sizes, and there is a focus on academics and not as much on student life. It's a superb option for engineering and automotive, but highly selective in the public universities. So if you are planning to go for a private university at an undergraduate level, you can definitely consider that. Consider and stay there for 3 years, work for a while, and then go for a master's, which will be completely free. In terms of updates, you've got two different things that were not so mandatory before, but have become completely mandatory, which is the APS and the Test AS. APS is the documents attestation process which Germany requires, and the Test AS is the entrance exam for undergraduate students to the programs. Zealand has actually come up as a bit of an alternative to Canada and Australia because it has only about 8 universities and a handful of colleges. The New Zealand dollar is relatively cheaper. And there has been a major interest in this country in 2023. However, at the beginning of this year, we're just about in 2024, the visa rejection rate rose to about 40%. So for the previous intake, this was about only 28%, which saw 12% increase. This is a bit of a problem. The same problems that are coming up in Canada right now, which is the lack of skilled jobs and affordable housing is a problem. And, the lot of students are planning to go over there, not for the purposes of purely academics, but for the purposes of studying abroad at all costs. That is something which New Zealand is also experiencing. But again, whatever applies to Canada or Australia, you've got about 8 universities that are really good. If you get into one of those 8 universities and would like to come back, or are in one of the in-demand sectors of New Zealand, then you could definitely go to New Zealand as well. Singapore and Hong Kong are the two Asian options which are there. Singapore has got two of the top universities in the world, which is the Nanyang Technological University and the National University of Singapore, but not much beyond it, to be honest. You've got a stable economy with jobs. It's got the Asian financial hub for many companies, and post-study work rights are available with a path to citizenship, which is a slightly more complicated and longer process. However, it is definitely a viable option because it is closer to India. It has got a huge Indian community. It's a multicultural place which actually has got a sector in terms of finance and business and so on and so forth. The problem is that getting admitted to Nanyang Technological University or the National University of Singapore is by in itself a very difficult process. There's also the Singapore Management University, SMU, but that does not have any engineering programs or computing programs. We've got Hong Kong as well. Chinese influence has means an uncertain future, but post-study work rights are available, and you've got some top programs in the top universities, and you've got a historical link to business and finance all over the world. So now that you have actually gone through this entire overall overview of the process, I think one of the questions that comes into the picture is that, okay, fine, you gave us all this information, or we have seen all this information, but what should I do? Like, how do I decide what to do, and what do we do about this process, right? So let's just try to look at this particular student survey insight, which was conducted just at the beginning of this year. There's a bit of a cropping issue in that, but I think you could probably get it. This is mostly the same thing as the pink thing over here, and this blue thing is the same thing over here. So you can see over here that availability of graduate employment schemes, when students were asked about it, was the first thing that comes into the picture, whether it's UK, Australia, Canada, USA, New Zealand, high ranking of institutions, a wide range of academic programs, and post-study work policies are something which are there as part of the concerns, the factors the students like to consider. Access to outcome is something that really is very important. Availability of graduate employment schemes and the reputation of the institutions that you are studying in is something that matters really to a lot of the serious students. So let's just talk a little bit about how to decide, right? So don't just follow the crowd. Define your goals for studying abroad. So if you are seeking a specific academic program, then look for countries with renowned universities in that field. If the cultural immersion is important to you, then choose a country with a rich and vibrant culture. Or if you want to study a particular foreign language, then there's nothing better than going to that particular country for that particular purpose. Now, when we have an outcome, is money the outcome? Is cultural exposure the outcome? Is research work the outcome? Is something that is making sure that you get a master's degree that actually helps you in your future career the outcome? Studying abroad should not just be about taking an item off your bucket list. It should enhance your resume and your professional profile. A degree from a university in a particular industry hub, for example, it can be a major advantage when you come back to India, and that particular that particular university has got alumni all over India as well. Think beyond the immediate experience. How will studying in this country benefit your experiences in the long term, right? Your goals should be something that you are aware of before you start the process, right? Are you aiming for the international work experience? Or if you are aiming for international work experience, then try to look for somewhere where you do have a postgraduate work permit where you can work in, indefinitely, or at least for a period of 1 or 2 years. If migration is the main goal, like if settling abroad is something that you really, really are interested in, then a country with a clear path to a permanent residence would be better. However, you have to also look at the jobs available at those countries. So if you don't have uh, the jobs available at those countries, it can be very difficult to survive over there. If you're trying to come back to India, then you should look at how many alumni networks that country at that university gives you access to. Because when you come back to India as well, we've got many students who have pursued their education abroad and come back to India after pursuing their education and continue to work in the industry over here, having great successful careers and so on and so forth. So, what value is it added? Because in the very beginning, we try to explain about the various reasons you would like to pursue this degree. Try to see which of those applies to you. Try to see an outcome that you're looking for and try to look at your long term intent. Some do's and don'ts, of course, during the consideration of the application process. Definitely consider the academic reputation of the university that you're planning to apply to. Don't apply just because, your friends have told you that it's a good place or it is, a place that ranks somewhere and so on. Employment and career center is, as you said, jobs is something that is important to all of you. If you make sure that you are focused on the university, which actually handholds you and guides you through the process of looking for a job, that is something which you really need to focus on. The research facilities that the universities has and the duration of the at the cost of the course are all factors that you should consider. Because a bachelor's degree can be 3 to 4 years and be a very expensive prosperous proposition. And the input cost is a bit higher as well. Location can be very important, not just the weather and trying to understand whether it would work for you as or not. Because for postgraduate students, you don't have that much time. Within a period of 7 to 8 months, you really have to start looking for internships or jobs just so that you are better placed for your future. Alumni network, just as I mentioned before, whether it is in the country that you're planning to study at, or it is in in your country which is home, which is in your home country which is India, you definitely have to consider that. Don't consider based solely on cost. Now, what do I mean by that? Like a lot of countries, like for example, Australia, Canada, US, they have higher input costs, but you can definitely recoup that once you start working. If you consider a program just because it is lower cost, you might end up in a situation where you end up with a degree which doesn't add value to your profile, which is not very, well renowned in the country that you go to pursue your degree, or even when you come back to India. Don't focus only on places where you get lots of on-campus jobs or part-time jobs, because honestly, that will not help you in your career. What really helps is you're working at a part-time place like a bar or a McDonald's or a shop will not really help you. It will maybe give you a bit of pocket money, but in the long term, how you do in your career will be based on what skill set you get and how you're able to get a full-time job. Do not compete with your peers, because at the end of the day, you are going to have someone who's going to do better than you, someone is going to do worse than you, and do not get influenced by social media or digital media, print media. And of course, I do not believe in the immigration at all costs approach. However, if that is something that you want to do, feel free to go ahead. That's not a problem. It is just not something that is very advisable, because once you have that one track mindset, you have the chance to get misled for other factors as well. Do you start the application process? Honestly speaking, the best time is now, right? Once you have understood your desired outcome, you can start a year in advance, to a few months in advance. Identify your course and country, and you can definitely apply to multiple countries. See the overall eligibility requirements. Take your required tests, the SAT, CT if needed for the US, IELTS, TOEFL, PT, Duolingo. If you're planning to apply to UK, Oxford and Cambridge do require a particular entrance test as well. You should gather your academic documents. Sometimes people have not even picked up their degrees, their transcripts, mark sheets. Update your resumes. Apply for or renew a passport, and consider that a cost that you will incur. If you are working, please do not quit your job. Try to figure out how you could do this alongside, because creating a gap in your profile is also a problem. And if you are studying, please do not drop out, because you do need to complete the program that you're planning to do. So this pretty much brings us to the question and answer session. If you have any questions, this was our presentation about an overview of the uh, application process of studying abroad. We have put our contact details over here. Feel free to take a screenshot, and my colleague Sajit will also post a link in the chat, a contact form, if you would like to contact us for your admissions process or any kind of help. You can follow us on Instagram at Longshore Edu, on LinkedIn or on LinkedIn at Longshore Edu, on YouTube at Longshore Edu, and we also have a podcast called The Longshore, available on Spotify or wherever you listen to podcasts, which is apparently something you say when you have a podcast. So we are here to help and take questions. Please put them in the chat, in the question answer box, and we will see if we can answer them. Anybody plans to come back to India after their masters on MBA? How easy or difficult is it to find a job back in India? Okay, so there is, if anybody plans to come back to India after their MBA or masters, how difficult or easy is it to find a job back here in India? It's depending on what, again, so if let's say you're planning to do your MBA or masters, it's a good idea to see how that degree is recognized in India, because you definitely have got the skill set of someone who pursued that degree abroad. The MBA or master's degree that you get in India can also be something which you can compare to. So, one of the things that you would have seen is that engineers in India or business MBA graduates in India find themselves to be very less employable or underemployable. So, when you come back to India, try to see how the job placement market works for that particular university here. So, as long as the university has got some kind of reputation in India, a lot of places will end up having the kind of recruitment for the particular process when it comes to hiring people with foreign degrees. This was something which was there before, where people used to say that foreign degrees are not recognized in India. But nowadays, the population with international degrees is highly recognized here, and you can definitely get a job here as long as it is from a good university and a program which actually is in demand even back in India. The next question is, what is the availability to get employed in Australia after your master's? So Australia is, as I mentioned, a very specific case. If you are doing your master's in business, if you're planning to do your master's in one of the fields, especially, for example, climate finance, if you're planning to do it in sustainability, energy, those kind of things that are in demand in Australia, there's a skilled occupations list. And in that particular area, the amount of jobs available are far more than jobs that are available in other areas. So in Australia, if you're specifically looking for it, you should definitely plan to look at that particular skill set list. That gets updated every year or 2 years or so, but definitely make sure that decide whether they would like to you know go to one of those fields or not. Because if it's a field which is which is not covered, then you might have a bit of a difficulty finding skilled jobs, because it indicates that you've got Australian citizens who are already applying for those jobs and enough competition is there itself. Okay, the next question is that as a person who has done their entire schooling internationally, would you recommend that they go to a university abroad or in India? This is actually a interesting question, because you've got, so in fact, I had a student very recently who had done his high school in New York, who had done his bachelor's degree from India, worked in India for about 4 or 5 years, and then gone back to the US. Now he's going to go back to the US for his particular master's. So if you've done your international school, if you are done your entire schooling internationally, there is no harm in going straight for your bachelor's abroad, right? But the idea is for you to try to understand what is the outcome that you're looking for, right? Be outcome focused. If your goal is to make sure that you get a particular degree in a particular skill set, and budget is something which is not as much of a constraint for you, then definitely you could consider going abroad, because the cultural differences that are there, kind of programs that are available there, the kind of diversity of experiences that you can get abroad are far more than what you can get in India. But again, every person's situation is slightly different. Having said that, if you have done your schooling internationally, you could definitely go for your bachelor's abroad. There is no problem in that. Try to figure out, like, if you, depending on the course that you want to study and depending on the particular country that you have in mind, we can see whether what would be the right option for you. But go for it. Why? There's no harm in it. Okay, I don't see anything major apart from these questions. So I'm just going to give it another minute or so as I wrap up this session. Thank you so much for taking your time out from your Saturday weekend to attend this webinar to hopefully get some understanding. We will be putting this up on our YouTube channel. We will be putting this up maybe just about 2-3 days or so, and you should be able to watch this if you would like to do so. Meanwhile, follow us on our social media channels. There's a contact form which has been posted in the chat box. You can always write to us. You'll be getting follow-up emails from our site, and you can reply to that as well for your admissions process. We do help with the entire application process, whether it is the selection of universities, the pre-counseling, ensuring that you are in the right path. If you're starting early enough, we will be helping you with the profile building aspects as well. So for that, we would be happy to help you out. The contact information is displayed on the screen, and you can definitely reach out at any point of time. Thank you so much, and I'll be calling the session to a close, and have a good week. Okay, my colleague has alerted me that there's just one more question. How much scholarship can we get to study in US and UK through the GRE, GMAT, or TOEFL IELTS score? So TOEFL IELTS score doesn't really matter when it comes to scholarships. You need to have there's a minimum threshold that you need to clear. If it's 7, you need to get 7, 7.5 with the minimum subsection scores. With GRE and GMAT for MBA and top business schools, if you have got a high score of around 710, 720, you can get scholarships of up to 30%, 40%, 50% even, depending on the ranking of the university. So if you're applying to a very, very top ranked university, then expecting a scholarship is very unlikely. Just getting admission is the goal there, right? But you cannot really expect that you would get a huge scholarship at the very top ranked universities. If you've got a great GRE GMAT score, if you've got a great GRE score of 320 plus, 330 plus, then you can even get a 50% to 60% scholarship based on merit. Now, it is highly, highly competitive. So it depends on which university you are planning to apply to. If you apply to only the very, very top selective universities, it becomes very difficult to get a scholarship. And if you apply to the universities that are slightly less selective and you are one of the best applicants over there, you can get even up to 30, 40, 50 and assistantships and funding as well. So those things are definitely available based on your merit that you display. I think, okay, there's suddenly 2 more questions, which is a process to get into masters in Australia, and the process is again reasonably simple. You start a year in advance. You take the IELTS or TOEFL exam. The Duolingo and PT is another option, as I mentioned earlier. You need the particular program that you're interested in. Apply to that program about 6-7 months in advance. The intake in Australia is February is the major intake and July is the secondary intake. So the secondary intake has just closed. It would be a good idea to now target the February intake, and the applications start closing around August and September. So please, if you're interested in the February intake of Australia, get in touch now, because you really need to start the application process now. All right. So thank you very much. That is going to be it from my side. And any further questions, you have the contact form, you have our contact information. Please reach out to us and have a good week.